Hi, everybody. It's 1:00 and we are live. Hello, West Coast Soul. Hello, my community at Shifting Women Rising. Welcome and thank you for day 2. All week this week, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, I am running a mini session of the topics we cover in our live women's circles. Our women's circles run Thursday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Hi, you made it. Thank you. Because that's when my kids go to bed and then we can get into the gooey stuff. And when you come into our full-blown women's circles, there's a lot more interaction that I can't put out live. Hi, Mom. Because we want to keep our circles, not secret, but safe and sacred. Whatever comes out stays in circle, doesn't go live. The only person who shares her shit live is me. And I accept that. I got to put myself out there, or how is somebody else going to feel good about being vulnerable with me? So my name is Joe Mazgay. I am at West Coast Soul 16. The 16 is there because that's when I started, and it reminds me of how far I've come. Believe it or not, I started with a line of t-shirts. A line of t-shirts that were all I am goddess, I am strong, I am beautiful. And look at how far we've evolved. It's gone... And I'm so excited. I'm really happy. So, hey, Nat, I am at West Coast Soul 16 on Facebook and Insta. They're the only two I do because it's the only places I show up. I don't tweet. I don't TikTok. I don't have time for it all. West Coast Soul 16 at gmail.com if you want to say hi. And westcoast16.ca. My schedule is fully on there. You want to reach out, you want to chat. I'm really easy to find. West Coast Soul is my umbrella of love. I run all sorts of programs. I run women's programs, children's programs, circles, retreats. Everything I run is about bringing about community. It is about bringing about healing, self-acceptance, personal growth, and most importantly, self-connection. Because if you're not connected to self, and we're going to get into that, that is circle in 2 days. Hi. If you're not connected to self, how do you connect to anything else? You just can't. And today we're talking about boundaries. We need boundaries to protect our self-connection. Honestly, it's imperative in this day and age to have boundaries. Boundaries are those expectations you set for how you will be treated, how somebody's going to speak to you, what somebody can take from you, what you're going to do in a relationship. Your boundaries need to be set and they need to be clear. I also need to have boundaries to show my children examples of boundaries, because if I don't, where will they learn them? I have to break those generational trauma trains of women being complacent, women smiling and being pleasing and taking and yes and being small. That's fucking bullshit. Oh, by the way, we dropped the F-bomb. It's bullshit. We are not small. We are not puny. We have voices, and it's time for women to be heard and to be respected, and for us within our divine feminine to rise up and meet the masculine. And if you're going, I don't know what you're talking about, you're going to have to go back and see yesterday's cast. Why do you need boundaries? Where do you need boundaries? We're going to go through all of that today. And this is a program, this is a session that I not only run for women, I not only run for children, I also run for big sisters, big brothers. This is a huge session, and it's a really important one, because without boundaries, we are potentially really easy prey. We can really easily become victimized, taken for granted, taken advantage of. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants to feel that way. We want to feel our self-worth. We want to feel like we are important. And when my space and when my feelings are validated, then I feel good about myself. But when they're violated, I feel completely mistreated. I feel less than. I feel like my self-worth, everything is completely disrespected. And that's a terrible feeling. And I don't know that there are many people who can say they've never felt that way, because as we discussed yesterday, there is so much wounded out there looking to find those of us who are make easy victims. So having boundaries sets your standards of relationships, be them romantic, be them friendship, be them within your own family. Boundaries are significant for your own well-being. When you have clear and personal boundaries, you get to focus more on yourself. Also, what you want, what you need. And if somebody tries to present you something that doesn't fall within your boundaries, it's an easier no. And standing strong in your no is something that really needs to come out more, especially something to teach our children, our daughters. And not because daughters need it more than sons, just because they're kind of a little bit more vulnerable still. And we're shifting all of that. So protecting our physical minds, protecting our mental sanity, saying out loud, I am no one's emotional baggage dumpster. That's empowering. Having boundaries is empowering. And isn't that at the end of the day what we want? We want to feel empowered in our own life. Having boundaries gives you stronger confidence, gives you well-deserved respect, and shows by example how you're going to be treated, shows by example your children how they should be treated, as well as it breaks generational trauma, it breaks victimhood, and it gives you 2 feet to stand on. So who needs boundaries? Whew, it's a really long list, actually. Family needs boundaries. You know, we all have that one person in our family who's just trying to help as they tell you how to live your life. It's your life. If they're trying to help doesn't suit you, they need boundaries. Partners need boundaries, and then they will know how to treat you, and then you have a better relationship. Coworkers and employers. Sorry, my bangs. I need a bang trim. We're in a pandemic. Nobody's open. Coworkers need boundaries. Employers need boundaries. This is my work time. This is my family time. This is my home time. This is my personal time. All of these things need boundaries, right? Neighbors, online social platforms, boundaries. They will keep your mental health stable. They will support your mental wellness. Absolutely. You know who else needs boundaries? People who don't want to see you change. As somebody who has had a huge transformational growth over the past 5 years, I learned very quickly and in a kind of a hard way that not everybody wants to see you change, because when you change, you're changing the dynamic of all of your relationships. And so if somebody has great comfort in what they get from you and don't give back to you, that's great for them. But what are you getting? Sometimes we end up feeling very depleted, very empty. We're not receiving nearly as much back as we are giving. And sometimes the people on the other end of those relationships really don't want that to move. People who project their limitations and their fears on you, they need boundaries, because you know what? Just because you're afraid to show up in the world doesn't mean I am. Just because you're afraid to move forward, just because you're afraid to look at your relationship doesn't mean I am. So these types of people really, really need their boundaries set. Otherwise, they tend to object to yours. And that's okay. That's human nature. How do you know if you need boundaries? Oh, boy, this was a really hard list to go through, because even as somebody who's really strong in what she wants and what she needs, there were triggers and there were things where I had to go, oh, I really need to take another look at myself here, because we're all constantly moving. Something I say all the time, I'm not perfect. I'm not on a platform. I'm not telling you how to be, but I am telling you what I've learned thus far. So just as much as everybody else is work in progress, I am too. But if you don't speak up when you're being mistreated, you probably need some boundaries. If you give away too much of yourself, physically, emotionally, or your time, you might need boundaries. Time is a big one also. When you want to disagree, but you're too afraid, so you agree anyways, you probably need some boundaries. If you feel guilty, hello moms, when you feel guilty for taking time for yourself, for putting your kids to bed and having a bath, for anything you're doing for your own self-care, self-love, self-sanity, if that brings you guilt, you probably need some boundaries. If you are often feeling taken for granted, taken advantage of, not appreciated, then you probably need some boundaries. Thank you, Natalie. If you find yourself in a toxic relationship, now, I don't want to get too far into toxic relationships because that can blow up, but a relationship that runs toxic is not just a partnership. There are many toxic friendships. There are many toxic bosses. There are many toxic families. So if you're finding yourself feeling like this is a really toxic relationship, I would encourage the first thing you do is to find boundaries. And we're going to get into how to set them. So don't sit there going, but I don't know how, because that's how I felt the first time I went through this. Like, yeah, I need boundaries, but I don't know how to do so. If you fear what other people think about you, you need boundaries and some other things, self-worth, self-confidence, self-esteem. But this will all come full circle. The first thing you need are boundaries. The best thing I ever heard was, what other people's opinion of me is absolutely none of my business. And it's true, because if I'm living my life worrying about how other people view me, I'm not living my life connected to self. I'm not living authentically. I'm not putting out there my true self. So if I'm concerned with what other people think about me, I need boundaries. If you are someone who overshares your life, you need some boundaries. And if you constantly feel like a victim, putting up boundaries will take away the ability for somebody to make you feel that way. It will come as a natural coincidence or consequence of putting up boundaries. And if you attract people who are constantly trying to control you, trying to dominate you, trying to tell you how to live, what you've done wrong, and what you should do better, you probably need some boundaries, because at the end of the day, you're doing fine. You're doing a great job. Everybody does the best with what they have in front of them right now, with the knowledge they have. And for anybody else to judge that and shame that, get rid of them. So what boundaries? What boundaries are we looking for? How about personal space boundaries? That physical, right? That's huge. This is something that we really need to teach our children. That physical space, that personal space. No intimacy without consent, regardless of your relationship, whether it's platonic, romantic, married, it doesn't matter. You don't owe anybody a piece of this. And on the same note, something I say all the time in my sacred chakra circles, oftentimes people will, oftentimes in our youth, we feel pressure to give up physically what we're not ready to make us feel better, to keep a relationship, et cetera, et cetera. And what I tell my girls is this: I am not a better person for giving my physicalness up to anybody else, but I'll tell you right now, you are a better person if I let you in, because I have self-worth. And those are boundaries we're setting, especially with young ladies. But that's a whole other circle. Relationships need boundaries. If you're in a relationship that you can't keep your beliefs in, if your beliefs different from your partner's or your friends, et cetera, and they try to sway you as if your beliefs aren't enough, good enough, in agreement, so they're wrong, that needs boundaries. That's a red flag. And if you're not able to connect to yourself or stay connected to yourself in a relationship, if you enter a relationship and all of a sudden you go from being, Joe to Joe and so, and that's it, you need some boundaries, because you are worthy of keeping your personal connection. You are worthy of being yourself. You ought not ever be made to feel guilty about having your own thoughts, having your own beliefs, having your own needs for quiet time, self-care, a bath, anything. Then you need some boundaries. Anything that doesn't feel right, that gut feeling you get, if it doesn't feel right, question it. I went over it yesterday, and I'm sure it'll come up again. I go for my gut every time. So if the feeling is off, if somebody's trying to get me something, to do something, to say something, to support something that tightens up my gut, It's a no, period. Time needs boundaries. And this was an interesting for me, especially because I'm a mother of 4. You know, having time to myself doesn't happen very often. And I am by nature a very introverted person. So I need boundaries on time. I need to shut off my phone at a certain hour. I need to not look at Facebook when I first wake up in the morning. I need my self time for my own mental wellness. Saying no to helping others when you don't have time to. Those are boundaries worth being respected. We live in this time where instant gratification and busyness is seen as being ever so important, or being busy is ever so successful. But taking the time to say, I don't have time for that. I would rather just sit and relax. That is having boundaries for self. That is asserting what you need for you. And that is supporting your own mental wellness, which is ever so important. Emotions need boundaries. You don't need to justify your whys, you know. If I have a no, it's a no. Why? Because I don't want to. And, you know, as I was a kid, and I catch myself saying it all the time, I'm sure my mother's watching, giggling away, but all of us hated that because I said so. But the truth of the matter is, because I said no. I don't need to justify why I can't do whatever it is somebody else needs me to do. I have to set my boundaries, my standards, what my needs are. I am worthy of prioritizing my well-being over helping others. And I'm a very helpful person. I'm a very giving person. I have no problem with that. But sometimes we get drained. And we need to know that if we're drained, we need to take care of self first. We need to set those boundaries. And we are worthy of acknowledging those feelings. We are worthy of saying, I'm just tired. I just need something for myself. And not having guilt or shame put on for us. Because oftentimes we self-shame. Even if somebody else isn't shaming us, we self-shame. And that's not really very cool. I have a story which is a little bit humorous, but also a little bit very sad now that I think about it. Many years ago, I was probably easily 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, when my oldest daughter was younger. It was Christmas time, and my mother-in-law, my in-laws all had come over, and please understand, my mother-in-law is an amazing grandmother. I would never say anything bad about her. She's been a phenomenal grandmother to my children, but she'd had a little bit of wine with Christmas dinner, as we all have. This isn't for shame. This is actually kind of funny. She'd had a little too much wine with Christmas dinner, and that's okay. We've all been there. But my mother-in-law would not leave without a kiss goodbye from her grandchildren. And the younger ones all obliged. Everybody loves grandma. That was amazing. But my oldest was like, I am not kissing you. You are drunk. You smell like wine. I don't want to kiss you goodbye. As I look back, my daughter set boundaries. And as a mother, I didn't respect them. Because I think it took us about an hour. She hid under the kitchen table. I think the bribe went from 5 to 10 to 20 to $50 to kiss her goodbye so she'll go home and we can go to bed. And it's a funny story because when she went back to school for March break, or after Christmas break, and they said, tell us what you did over March break. Guess what she wrote an essay about? Having to kiss her drunk grandmother goodbye. And it is funny in tongue in cheek. But what I taught my daughter was she wasn't worthy of boundaries. She wasn't worthy of saying no. And I regret that because I should have stood with her and said, you know what? She doesn't want to kiss you goodbye. She'll give you a wave, and that's enough. Because as moms, we forget that our kids need to show boundaries also. And this was a big lesson for me. But as I said, I'm not perfect. I'm totally winging it as I go. I'm totally trying to figure it out. And that's okay. We all are. So how do you set boundaries? How do we say, hey, I need boundaries? I got some notes. I'm always got notes. I love my notes because I'm such a go left, tell a story, and then I never get back on track. But today we're staying on track. We're setting boundaries. How do we set boundaries? I like this list. Actually, it was a lot of fun writing it because it's completely off the cuff. It's not something I'd ever heard before, but holy shit, it worked. Make an I hate list. And I put hate in quotation marks. What is it about interactions and relationships you detest? What is it about not having boundaries that just fucking irks you? You know, like, don't say, like, find a reason. What is your gut saying? Why is it saying? Be specific. It's not, Lucy is so annoying. What does that tell you? You don't want to spend time with Lucy? Why? Because she's annoying. Try, I detest it. I hate it when Lucy questions everything I do. Okay, now we have something to work on because Lucy's probably a really cool chick, but her questioning everything you do is what you hate. And pay attention to that because that's where we're going to set our boundaries. Because on the next step, make an I wish list and list it accordingly and list it specifically. Go through your I hate list and ask if there's a way and what it is to reverse this, to make it more comfortable, to save a relationship perhaps, because maybe it's not the relationship has to go, but the action that goes with it. We can get rid of that, right? Be specific instead of, I wish my mom spoke to me differently, to saying, I wish my mom would lose her sarcasm and speak to me with kindness, right? That is now something you can address. And then we can release avoidance, et cetera, et cetera. I wish that she would speak to me differently. I wish that she would release sarcasm. I wish that she would speak to me with kindness. And now you have a conversation, right? Now you can start to change something. Now the next step is the hardest one. And it's the hardest one. That's all I can say about this. Inform your relationships of your new boundaries, of your healthy boundaries. Because this might be difficult, but in the end, it's what's going to save your relationship. Asking Lucy, for example, for an honest conversation and telling her how you feel. Now, when you're going to have this conversation, please don't go in directly attacking. Please don't go in saying you. Do it with kindness, do it with compassion, because you're asking somebody to change their behaviors to make you feel better, right? So let's be kind about it. Let's be compassionate about it. Maybe we start with, I feel, hey, Lucy, I feel overwhelmed when you ... Maybe perhaps you can do this. Maybe perhaps I need some time with myself. Maybe I have a right to make my own decisions without you questioning everything, and just allow me to make my decisions with kindness, with some compassion. That's okay. State your needs really clearly. And if she questions it, all you can say to her is, I need you to trust me. I need this for myself. I'm feeling really confident in my decision making. I'm trying to save our relationship, so I'm not avoiding you. And if you make it your need, I need from you this, they're going to do one of two things. They're going to want the relationship and they're going to work on their change behavior, or they're not. And that's their decision, because you setting that healthy boundaries, it has to be consistent, because step number 4, after the most difficult part, is repeat and repeat and repeat. Because sometimes when we speak up for the first time, we're not taken seriously, unfortunately. Sometimes people will try and challenge it because their behaviors are something they're quite comfortable with. These are their habits that they've never had to change up before, right? Nobody's ever put it to them that way, and that can get really difficult. So you need to stay strong and consistent, and when the behaviors come back up, repeat, remind them of the last conversation, ask them to respect it. And it might take 2 times, it might take 3 times, it might take 1 time, and they have more respect for you moving forward. Wouldn't that be awesome? Because that's definitely a possibility. Because the thing is, we want beautiful relationships. As to other people, they want a beautiful relationship from us. So if somebody loves me and somebody respects me, they're going to want me to feel good being with them. One would hope. And then step 5 is when you've made your decisions, you got to take action. And taking action is not nearly as difficult as setting the boundary and communicating the boundary, because you're strong in who you are. You're strong in your self-confidence. You know that you are worthy of being treated a certain way. And if your boundaries are constantly ignored, you have to decide what action you're going to take. Are you going to not answer the phone? Are you going to unfriend them? Are you going to unfollow them? Because on social media, it's negative, negative, negative. I unfollow people on social media all the time. I unfriend people too, and I'm sorry, but sometimes something comes up. It just triggers my own energy, whether it's you, whether it's me. I have to release it for my own mental wellness. Set clear boundaries will get you respect. And here's something that we don't learn until much later in life. But if I am surrounded by negative energies, I am blocking out anybody with a positive energy I want in. And if somebody with a negative energy cannot release their boundaries and they fall away, all of a sudden, there is space for someone else to come in who probably has a more like-hearted energy, a more like-hearted connection. Because there's nothing scarier than saying, what if I set the boundaries and then I have no friends left? What if she walks away? Well, what if she does? That's her decision, his decision, whomever. That is their response to your boundaries. But once they do that, if they fall away, that has made room for somebody who will respect your boundaries to come in. So don't be afraid to be alone. There are 8 billion people in the world. There are like-hearted, like-minded people everywhere. Do not be afraid. You will not be alone. And then when somebody does respect your boundaries, because we're so afraid people have not, we're so afraid of losing people, we forget that there are going to be people who just don't realize it. And what we have to do at the end of it all is give them gratitude. Thank you. Thank you for the efforts. Thank you for changing how you speak to me. Thank you for giving me space when I needed it. And allow them to know that their actions made a really positive influence on you. Because everybody wants to feel like they're giving or they're in a positive relationship. I do. I apologize. Not everybody does. You know, there's some people who really don't, and we know that. Most people in a healthy relationship want it to be healthy both ways. And perhaps they didn't know it. Perhaps they were raised differently. Perhaps they haven't gone through the same amount of growth you've gone through. But when you tell them, you made that effort, I see it, and I'm grateful for it, it only grows tenfold. And it shows them how to set boundaries. Because now you have the trickle out effect. You've set boundaries. Your friends know how to set boundaries. Your children know how to set boundaries. And that's how we make the world a better place. And maybe I am still naive. And we might not make the whole world a better place, but we're going to make our world a better place. I'm going to make my personal space. And we all talk about bubbles. We all have bubbles within our pandemic. Well, you know what? Now my bubble is a great space because I only let really great people in who respect my boundaries. And it's a really smart way to reinforce the boundaries and reinforce the friendship. It's a beautiful thing because I would like to know that I've made a difference to somebody. I would like to know that my true self is respected and I am respecting somebody else's true self. So this is what I have to say about boundaries. We need our boundaries because we need to protect who we are. When we are coming, we are in a pandemic. We are in a situation where everything is online and we're looking at each other with microscopes. The world is in a place it's not been in before. And we're all feeling, not all of us, a lot of us are feeling very vulnerable. But even though we're feeling vulnerable, we still have to maintain our true self, our self-connection, our self-worth, our self-respect. And the easiest way to do that is to have strong boundaries. And strong boundaries are so important for myself, for example, for my children, and for having really great relationships, whether they be within my family, romantic, platonic, with my ex. Boundaries are essential. My name is Jo Mazgay. I am at West Coast Soul. This is my live for today. Thank you so much. Thank you for your comments. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Natalie. I have Facebook users, and I don't know who you are because it just says Facebook user. I'm sorry. I see you, Mary. I'm grateful for all of you who came out. I'm going to be here tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about self-worth. And that can sometimes be a bit of a trigger, but you know what? It can also be extremely empowering to realize where your self-worth is at and what you can do to make it better, because you're worth it. You're worthy of boundaries. Thank you. I hope you have a wonderful day. I'm at West Coast Soul 16. If you like this, if you want to learn more, we start our next session of Women's Circles next Thursday, 8 p.m. And I will post it again about what we're going to be talking about. We have more women, we have more interactions, and we're all just doing our part to make the world a better place. I hope you all have a great Tuesday. Stay safe, stay healthy. Much love.